Hi everyone, I'm Professor Sally Eaves and a warm welcome to our channel. Today I'm speaking to you about three massive trends in the tech sector which I'm seeing pop up across many events. These are digital infrastructure, customer experience or personalization of experience, and ESG. And it's that final one that really links them all. ESG is now being baked into infrastructure by design and is a massive part of delivering good customer experience. So to explore this topic further, I recently visited Colt Technology Services HQ in London and sat down with their Senior Director of Strategic Sales, Malcom Puddefoot. Malcom works really closely with Colt's customers and therefore has a fantastic understanding of what customers are demanding for today, such as working with companies who have sustainability or ESG at their core. Malcom, brilliant to be with you today, fantastic. And perhaps we could start with the audience today. I kind of set the scene about different trends that are happening at the moment, different areas of change. What are consumers asking you most for out at Colt at the moment? What's the biggest change over the last 18 months or so?
Well, first of all, our customers are asking us a lot more around sustainability. So when my team, when we get into an RFP process or even pre-RFP process, the customers are interrogating us on our ESG credentials. And how that's going to map into their credentials and support their customer experience and their customers. So we've seen a massive step change. And also, when we engage with the CIOs, it's kind of much more up on their agenda than ever was before, and it impacts them quite greatly, actually.
I think it's a great point. I think just generally as well, we're seeing this kind of new consciousness, whether it's coming from consumers directly or employees in an organisation or the ecosystem partners that we're working with. For a tender application, for example, that kind of that entry criteria has changed, hasn't it? And when it comes to things around ESG, sustainability in particular, it's not just having the ESG report. It's having that regular kind of updates, that benchmarking and better measurement around this as well. That's true accountability rather than just the talking about it, isn't it? It's that substantiating action.
Well, do you know what? Right, so first of all, it's about the culture as well.
Yes.
It feeds down into the culture of the organisation. And what we're seeing, certainly in Colt, we're blessed with a great graduate scheme, we're blessed with a young employee set. It's much more up on their radar.
Definitely.
And then when you come through to accountability, relating that back to the CIO, the data management that they have to do now to make sure they're collecting data from, all the different areas, whether it's my functions, T&E, travel and expenses, whether it's fleet management, whether it's procurement. And how do you consolidate all of that data to be able to go out and report on it to make sure that you are stepping up to the standards that you said you'd do? It's a challenging time for them, especially, and you have to get the technology to be able to capture all that data and then use analytics to actually provide dashboards or however you're going to present it.
That's a great point. I think with dashboarding in particular, and how you get, as you were saying there, from that data volume and the variability of it, and the sheer kind of acceleration we've got in this area. How do you get to value from that? And it is that challenge around getting visibility right, getting integration right, and also the process around it. So you mentioned there about culture, but it's also the right change management, isn't it, to support agile change and the right skills uplift as well. And you mentioned specifically about the role of the CIO and how's that changing. What are you seeing there in terms of, say, skill implications as well? Because again, I think with ESG responsibilities coming under the office of CIO or CTO increasingly now, that again puts new responsibilities and skill needs too.
Well, they're not. I think they're getting to grips with having many more stakeholders within their business that they have to engage with, right? So whereas before it's technology providing a service, now with ESG almost becoming a fundamental long-term financial metric for the success of the business, they've got many more stakeholders. And let's be honest, without the long-term financial stability and growth of that business, CapEx will be cut, which means their investments will be cut. But no, I think it's, and all by the way, using that data that they collect to be able to understand whether the initiatives they're working on are actually being successful, how it's making an impact to either their employees, their customers, the customer experience, or even socially in their local economic and domestic area.
Exactly, and it's something we spoke about naturally recently, actually, about intention action gaps, wasn't it, in technology? Yeah. You see it a lot. So ESG in particular, pretty much every research report going will say it's right up there in terms of C-level kind of responsibility, accountability. It's right up there as kind of top three, what we've got to work on. When you look at actions around this, you kind of see gaps occurring in terms of being able to scale it. One of the problems I see the most is around measurement. And again, it comes back to what are you measuring? Have you got the right data for the right role at the right right time, but also is it siloed or not? And you can't have, for example, the dashboarding you were mentioning there, where when it comes to ESG metrics, they're over there, they're kind of peripheral, they're not embedded by design. We have to bring everything together and kind of reduce the complexity around this to make it easier to do so, and make sure we're not just looking at internal measures too. It's kind of that, scope 1 to 3, isn't it? Bringing in all the sources.
And all the while balancing, keeping the lights on with your current business today. So how am I going to keep the lights on? How am I going to keep that technology refresh, whatever standards it is, N-1, N-2, right? I need to keep the business focused and operating, but I also need to invest in technology for good, for the ESG. But in actual fact, what I'm starting to see now is customers starting to think about how they can use that technology for good, but also to open new markets.
Exactly.
And how do I develop a new market, a new product or a new service that hits a different sweet spot?
Honestly, do you know what? I think that's an absolutely great point around the communication around all things ESG. I have a phrase actually about changing the narrative. I think it couldn't apply more to this particular area. I think we've had this traditional view maybe that you've got social enterprise, you've got charity over here, this big spectrum, and over here it's big enterprise, and never the two will come together, and that's not the way it can be, I think actually investing in ESG not only will give you kind of business benefits from the fact of you've got smarter management of your technology, you're reducing consumption, look at the cost of energy crisis at the moment, but also, and you mentioned it about Gen Z and that young talent coming through, they are demanding change around 100%. That. They're demanding delivery, and they will walk away from an organisation, whether it's an advocate or as an employee or buying from, if organisations aren't delivering on. So this is a shared value opportunity. It's kind of possibly the biggest driver of competitive advantage, actually. So I think there's a massive kind of change in view there.
Well, first of all, they've got a massively powerful voice in the business. Let's be honest, they're the leaders of the future, right? So, and it's organisations like Colt that we invest heavily in them because we understand to have that sustainable future in terms of people talent, we need to do that. But then if you start thinking about, the internal bit, sustainability, waste management, yes, look at fleet management, we can do all of that. But like more excitement is the bit that you mentioned about before, is this is an opportunity for us to speak to our customers, our suppliers, work with NGOs, work with government, work with local government to deliver value to like the local community, but with regard to Colt, deliver it locally, but and globally. So how can you balance that? It's a topic that, I'll be honest with you, maybe 3 years ago would never been anywhere near my radar. And now the more I get into it and the more I understand how it affects our customer experience, our supplier experience. By the way, I don't believe that any organisation currently is going to survive probably globally without a full set of partner suite, right?
Exactly.
And that partner is intertwined. And there was, I can't remember who it was, I think there was my CEO, Kerry Gilder, she spoke recently about a meeting she had with the CEO of ServiceNow. Yes. And he says all about the power of 10, right?
Exactly.
So, and I think I see that proliferating down when we talk about ESG.
100%. It is, though. You can do more by coming together vibe, isn't it? And you can do well by doing good. Both of those things are intersecting.
Exactly.
And you're spot on, I think, around collaboration, kind of the power of the ecosystem. Has never mattered more, and we're even seeing it at some of the big events. MWC just a few weeks ago, a lot coming up. We're obviously event season at the moment, and that power of the collective, and we saw it through COVID, didn't we? Things like the HPC consortium as an example. When you get different parts of the ecosystem coming together, how can you accelerate the innovation curve better? Obviously coupled with open data sharing, etc. too. But we saw massive results in healthcare. Why can't we apply that to challenges of our time like ESG?
I'd love your thoughts on MWC. It's just come to mind, and I kind of know we've not spoken about this before, right? But MWC, there's a point in question. What is it? Probably the largest expo in Europe, maybe the world, but certainly in Europe, right? 142,000 people. That's a lot of T&E, a lot of carbon emissions coming together on that. I guess they're going to have to start thinking about how they use either the metaverse or how they use other different kind of technology for good. To still drive that collaboration, it's a bit difficult because you don't get that touchy-feely bit. You can't kick the tyres, right?
It's trying to get the best of both, isn't it? I think a lot of events are navigating that. And even like space in buildings, as we were talking about earlier as well, it's trying to get using it in the right way. So I think when it's events and also just office space more generally and ways of working and things, it's all about the power of that collective moment, isn't it? And if you can do that to come up with new ideas, bring different voices together, really make the most of that, it's definitely worth it. But other aspects, making sure you've got the quality of that online streaming, because again, it democratises access to this information too. So if you've got the right digital access on top, you get whole new audiences who would never have kind of had the benefit of that information in the first place. So I think we've got to have somewhere this kind of middle way between the two.
There's I haven't asked to use his name or his organisation, so I'm not going to do that, right? But just very recently, I mean, we work with a very large content owner and distributor of major events globally.
Yes. Yeah.
And one of his one of his challenges to me is, Malcolm, how can you get your network to be more of a real-time utilization-based network that enables me to manage my workloads, but also manage the resources I've got at the edge in the most optimum way? And this is kind of a challenge now I've got, right? Because we supply this global network, we know where the workloads are, we're figuring out how to get them to and from, but like it's almost turn on the hot cold tap, right? Turn it on, turn it off. And that's good, and then also managing the compute and all that kind of resourcing at the edge.
Exactly.
It's not an easy fix, right? But I think that goes back to the new markets.
MWC, you mentioned there, we saw a couple of big open foundation launches there, particularly around the API area. Yeah. And again, it was supporting developers, so negating some of the risks about cybersecurity, but how can we go further, faster? How can we innovate around 5.5 and 6G, etc.? And everything around that in terms of addressing problems, but also looking at new standards and governance, etc. too. Yeah. It was all about how do we bring people together to address some of these things, because you can't do it alone. And from a network point of view for sustainability, it's network, but it's also its architecture, it's processor level. All these different elements have to be brought to bear right to the level of the dashboard in front of you.
I think ESG is the catalyst for get people to think about that now, right? Because so how do we secure our enterprise and our nation states?
Yes.
Right. So at the same time delivering on that, and I think there's a convergence there, because they have to be going hand in hand.
Yes.
Security has to be up there. In actual fact, security and ESG, they're probably our top two focus areas that we see.
Indeed.
And I think this can be the catalyst, because the investment being made now, well, it needs to be digital first, obviously, it needs to be sustainable by design, and it needs to deliver that customer experience that we're all used to, which is, I want it now, I want it immediate, I don't want to wait, and I don't want to buy for what I eat.
Exactly, exactly. And again, probably the two biggest things that people are looking for right now is that commitment, that feeling secure, that your privacy and security is established. You've got that foundation to develop new use cases yet to be reinvented, but you care, and you're delivering for community and you're delivering for social impact at the same time. So absolutely, yes, they're the biggest drivers. And you mentioned experience there. I think there's another interesting interplay as well. So again, we mentioned it at the top, but consumer experience, the demands around personalisation, kind of friction-free, that type of thing, never been higher, hasn't it? But again, that's changed from an employee perspective and partners in the ecosystem perspective too. So when we're looking at making security less complex, more visible, more integrated, we want shared responsibility. We want a lot of that for sustainability too.
Yeah, of course we do.
We need to be looking at these things together, because if you don't get those foundation right, you're going to be losing people, because the experience will be too complicated. You'll be missing things, it'll be siloed information, and people are prepared to walk away if the experience isn't right, but also what you stand for and what you deliver on isn't right either.
We're never going to meet our commitment in terms of emissions, in terms of scope 3, unless we fully understand that supply chain from end to end.
Absolutely.
Collaboratively work together with our partners. I know that our procurement team actively grade our partners and suppliers on their sustainability credentials. So obviously they're doing it to us as well, right?
Of course.
Now, so there's so many benefits to doing it correctly. I'm not saying you have to throw money at something and always hope it's going to work. I think, but no one company's got all the answers, and that's where the collaboration comes into it. I mean, we could be speaking to a pharmaceutical organisation or a major manufacturing organisation, all that kind of stuff, because they've all got these great ideas. It's almost, you feel like you almost want a program office to say kind of come across everybody and bring us all together and bash our heads together for the common good, right?
Definitely. And also pair that up, as obviously for the audience out there as well, with getting that right information to you. And again, coming together, pooling that is massively important, but get granular around the vertical as well, because I think sometimes when we talk about these interconnecting themes like digital transformation, like personalisation of experience, like ESG, like security, yes, there's commonality, but there's also vertical differences as well. And again, I was just doing something yesterday around cybersecurity themes, and it was kind of saying, is ransomware not such a big issue anymore? And it was focusing on kind of a broader kind of look of things. But then if you drill down a particular area, utilities as one example, we've never seen so many attacks in that particular vertical, and we really need to be focusing on that rather than DDoS, for example. So we have to get the right information and get granular as well.
Wherever an organisation is on their journey of ESG, right? It's great that they, at least it's on the agenda, it's on the table. They've prioritised it somewhere within the stack. So it's a major talking point, but people have to deliver on their commitment, or do the very best to deliver on their commitment. I think it's like, what was it? aim for the stars and reach the moon, or whatever the phrase is, right? Have that real high goal.
Definitely.
And then at least you're going to go some way to meeting that, right?
Exactly.
That's the main thing, I think, for me, in terms of all organisations.
Love it, Malcolm. Brilliant. I think that's absolutely right. You know, aiming for the stars, have those goals, but also don't be afraid as well to be really transparent when they're difficult to meet. Because again, people really understand these are messy, interconnected problems. So don't be afraid to go for something because of the steps along the way. And Malcolm, I'd love to bring you back in on that as well to talk about tangibles, because I know you've done some amazing work here at Colt. I'd love to kind of share that and how consumers help drive you to do that too.
There's been some amazing individual contributors at Colt that use their CSR days for many different things, right? And that's fantastic, and it's great to see those individual stories. I think, if we think about what we've done as a business, most recently donated 4,000 laptops as part of that to all local schools. I particularly like the farm that we're actually growing in our own, what we call the Colt Hub, which is kind of our cafeteria area. We've been on, as a business though, this isn't something we've done overnight, right? So we've been on this journey. Most recently, I'm really proud that from a corporate level that we are now graded as platinum with EcoVadis. That's a global sustainability organisation that grades other organisations. We scored 75 out of 100, which puts us in the top 15 or 10% percentile, I think. And that's across 100,000 companies, 200 industries, and 175 different countries. So we're really, really proud of that, and we'll continue to drive very hard to remain there and just improve upon that. But we need to think about also, I'm going to bring it back to the customer, right? And our customer's customer. If I just think about me as an individual or you guys as an individual, I think this sustainability bit is really important. Like we said, the employee engagement, our customers' engagement with us. We're also important for their science-based targets as well, right? It's all interlocked.
Absolutely.
And I think, delivering that at the customer level, delivering it onto the consumer level on the ground. And when I say consumer, that can be an employee sitting at a desk in this office, or it could be, you sitting at home receiving a parcel for something or other, right? So it's all encompassing, and that's why it's challenging, and that's why we need to really step up to the task and have these great ambitions. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this plays out for the next 5 years.
Thank you, Malcolm. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you all for watching and listening to. More from us coming soon, looking at the latest trends and developments in all things digital transformation, personalised experience, and also ESG. More coming soon. Thank you.